Hello, welcome to Michael's Hill. This is going to be part 2 of the Class 33 Lima upgrading project. So last episode we looked at the buffer beams, so added those onto the body shell, which look a lot better than what was there before. So today we're actually going to move away from the body shell and look to add a DCC chip hardwired into the system. So what we're going to need for this is a soldering iron, a DCC chip, a little bit of wire, some heat shrink tubing, and some solder, and a soldering iron, a few other tools as well. So I'm going to quickly show you how this is done. With the Class 33, being quite a short locomotive, there's not too much distance for the wires to span, so hopefully we won't need to do too much additional wiring here. We can just take the chip and the wires that are already on it and hopefully get that wired up fairly quickly. It should be said that I've already run this loco on DC and it runs very well. If it didn't run well, I probably wouldn't convert it to DCC. DCC tends to like lots of pickups, and obviously a lot of these older DC locos don't have them, so if it's not running well I wouldn't think to fit DCC to it, but it already is running fairly smoothly, so I think it's well worth the go. So I'm going to be using a Hornby decoder for this job. The part number is R8249, which is a simple 4-function 8-pin decoder. So this is the chip. It has the chip at one end and then the wires to the connector at the other end. Now, normally the connector is where you'd pop it in the slot that's designed for DCC. Obviously with an old loco that isn't DCC ready, they won't have one. So there's two options here. You can either buy a kind of an adapter, a cradle that you pop in and then slot this straight into, or if you're not likely to use the chip again, you can just literally cut this off as close to the connector as possible, and then it leaves you with 9 wires. So that's what I'm going to do in this instance. I like to cut as close to this connector as possible, and as far away from the chip, which gives us the most wires. So let's quick snip across here. And then we go, we're free. So we're left with 8 wires of all different colours, and then there's an additional 9th wire that is a purple wire that I think is used for attaching to sound locos. So that's obviously not going to be what we're doing on this one at the moment, but it's nice to still have that option in the future. So now that the wires are free, we need to find which ones we need. Now we're looking for 4 of the wires here. The other 5 we're not going to be using at all. So the ones that we are going to use today are the black, the red, the grey, and I believe the orange. I will check that in just a second. So what I generally like to do is pull the ones that I know I need. So red, black, orange, and grey, and pull them to one side. And with the wires that are left, I just like to twist them up, keep them all together. Now, some people say you might as well just cut these off. I'm kind of of the opinion that I won't do that, just because it's always useful to have these spare wires in case you ever decide to add additional functions. So for me, I'm just going to leave them there. So when we have the motor here, it's quite simple what we do. So this is always the same no matter what motor we have. The wires all go to the same place. The black wire goes to the rail left. The red wire goes to the rail right, which is in this case at the rear. The grey wire goes to motor left, and the orange wire goes to motor right. So what we need to do is effectively take away these joins here, and then we wire them back up through the chip, and then we will be there. The other thing we need to do is remove this PCU. Effectively, when the DCC is in place, this is no longer required. So the first thing we can do is just get rid of that. It's quite a simple job, although it can be a little bit fiddly, so I will try and show you how it's done. But effectively, you just use your soldering iron to remove the join, and then we'll go from there. In fact, it might be easier if I remove the 2 wires first. So just find the solder join, just heat that up a little bit until it can be prized away. And there we go. So that's loads of, and we'll do the same on this side. Now, sometimes with these PCs, it's just easier to give it a bit of a wiggle to start with, get it moving. You can see where it's attached. In this case, it's just pulled out actually quite easily, so I just remove that. I will keep that just in case I ever want to turn it back to DC operation, but I doubt that I will. So the first thing we really need to do is work out where in the locomotive we think the chip's going to go. Just slide the body shell off the chassis. So you can imagine that this is where the front bogie will be and the back bogie here. There'll be the block of the weight that's going to be in the middle. So usually we'll probably have the chip somewhere in the centre. There's always plenty of room. So we just need to make sure that all the wires can reach where they need to reach. And then we'll be good to go. Just need to make sure that the black one can reach here. The grey one can reach there. The orange to the back here, and then the red one will be linked to this wire here. So it's all very simple, just a few quick solders. So I'm just going to solder all that up and we'll go from there. It's very simple, just a few kind of solder joins. So I'm just going to solder all those up and we'll see where we are. I'm going to be using some of this heat shrink insulation cabling as well, so effectively I just place it over the join once it's done, and then just apply a bit of heat from the soldering iron, and it melts around and it makes a nice seal and keeps everything insulated. The important thing to remember, and I'm sure I will forget, is to make sure that the cabling is placed on the join before you solder, otherwise you can't get it on. So I'm just going to cut 4 small lengths of this, and then I know that I've got enough for what I need. You don't need to do this, but it's just something that keeps your job neat. Make sure that you're not going to have any problems with short circuiting. And it also probably helps to hold the joins in place. Some of these wires are very fine, so the soldering can sometimes come a little bit loose. I often find it's easier just to get a third hand to help with some of this, just to hold the joins in place. So placing the heat shrink cabling over the wire to start with. Okay. Slide that down, and that'll help us at the end to make the final join. Just going to line this up here so they're both touching, and then it makes the soldering a lot easier. For wires it's fine, we just need the smallest amount of solder. So I'm just going to tin the end of the soldering iron and then just heat up the wires. And apply a little solder. We'll just give that a few seconds to cool down and it should make a nice join. I can tell that's already nicely joined, so I now slide over the piece of heat shrink tubing so it completely covers up the join, and then apply a little bit of heat from the end of the soldering iron. So I barely need to touch this, just a little bit of heat over the top, and you'll see it just shrinks up around the join. So you don't even need to use the tip. In fact, I'd suggest you don't use the tip. And there we go. We've got a nice soldered join there that's insulated from any other issue. So I'm just going to do the rest of them quickly and we'll go from there. So the chip is now fully soldered into place. So now I just need to put it back onto the loco and give it a test. the loco's now back together. I did give it a quick test before I put the body shell on, which is always a good idea, just because you don't want to go through all this, especially with some of the more complicated body shells to attach and find it doesn't work. But it's all working nicely. So it's got a really nice slow speed now, nice crawl. It's very smooth, and I'm very happy with kind of how that's turned out. So you can see it's a really simple thing to do to hardwire a Lima or an old Hornby or whatever loco to DCC. As long as the loco runs well and you've got a simple chip you don't mind putting in it, it's well worth doing. That's kind of it for part 2. Part 3, I'm going to be looking at the couplings probably. As I said, the one that is on the front end of the train here is being fouled by the extra detailing on the buffer beam. So I will have to look at a way to either reduce the size of the coupling or remove it completely. The rear end's not so much of a problem because I did remove the end, so the motor bogie is fine. It's just the other end it isn't. That's what I'm going to be looking at doing next. I've also decided that whilst I'm doing the flush glazing, I'm going to try and build some sort of cab for the Class 33 here. So at the moment, it's there's no cab in there at all at the driver's end, and it just, you know, it means that it can't take any driver or anything. Now, it will not be possible at the motor bogie end, I don't think, because of where the motor is, although I might try to do something. But certainly at the other end there is room to build a little cab. It probably won't be too detailed, but it just allows me to put a driver in one end, which I think will help massively. So I probably will add that into part 4 of the series, or part 5. So thank you very much for joining me again today, and I'll see you very soon. Goodbye.